Hello guys, and today I'm going to talk about how I got somebody to resign by forcing them to make an en passant move which they probably didn't know how to do. Okay, now it's very rare in chess that en passant is ever even used, and it is even more rare for it to be the only legitimate move possible in the game. But what is en passant? I don't know quite how you pronounce it. En passant, en passant. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to show you how it works, okay? Now, first of all, let's supposing you've got white. We're going to look at white, okay? Now, I've removed all the other pieces from the chessboard apart from 2 pawns, okay? Now, if I move the white pawn 2 squares up, and it has to be from this row, or if you're playing black, that row, okay? As you know, pawns take diagonally, okay? So you would think normally, if the en passant rule hadn't been done, didn't exist, then normally this white pawn would have moved past the black pawn so that it couldn't be took, if the en passant rule did not exist in chess. However, the en passant rule does exist in chess, and what that means is that a pawn can take, if a pawn has been moved 2 squares, then an opponent's pawn can take that pawn as if their opponent had only moved 1 square. So, for example, black can now move here and take the white pawn off. I'm going to go back. This is what would have happened if I'd moved 1 base instead of 2. Black could have taken me off. Okay? So because I moved 2 places instead of 1, because of the en passant rule, it means that black can still take me off. So you cannot escape being taken off because of the en passant rule. Now, chess beginners don't generally know about the en passant rule, and casual players of chess will not even remember it, even if they studied it in the past, because it's very, very rarely ever used in chess. Okay? Now let's look at a game I played where I exploited this. Now I admit that what I did was probably immoral. It was within the spirit of the game, it was within the rules of the game, but it may be essentially immoral because I basically tricked my opponent into resigning because they genuinely hadn't got a clue, I think, how to get out of it. So now let's look at the game that I played, okay? Right. Now I'm going to move all the way to the beginning of this. Now, these are the various moves. You will notice that I was losing pieces and not doing very well. Partly because I was trying to experiment with a few ideas. That, by the way, is quite interesting. What you'll notice here is that the bishop can't take the rook yet because my knight is in the way. I decide to sacrifice my knight, and my opponent didn't probably notice this and thought, oh great, a free knight. Took my knight, which freed up the space for me to then take his rook. I seem to be doing a lot of taking here, but later I start losing things. That was a genuine blunder. It was not intentional. Oh, maybe not. It was a genuine blunder, but it did allow me to so got a queen exchange, and now they've taken my bishop. So I basically am a rook up, and they've got a bishop and a knight. Now I move the rook up to stop them moving their king. They move their knight to try and threaten my rook. I stupidly made a catastrophic mistake here. And they then took my rook. So now I really don't stand much of a chance. Okay? I'm now going to go on a pawn-taking spree. Now this is where it gets interesting. I then move a pawn up to threaten the king. The pawn takes a pawn. I move my rook up to threaten the king. For some reason, the king then moved into this square for some strange reason. Now this is where it gets very, very, very interesting, okay? I then move a pawn up to protect a pawn because I'm about to do something very clever. They, for some reason, then try to threaten my rook. Okay? I now move a pawn up, check. And my opponent genuinely hadn't got a clue how to deal with this, because they probably didn't know about the En Passant rule. And at this point, they actually resigned. Why, you might ask? Well, I can't move the king there. I can't move the king there. I can't move the king there, or there. So I cannot move the king. And unless you know about the En Passant rule, you will not know how to take off this pawn, which is causing the king to be in check. And if you do not know about the En Passant rule, you're stuck, because you genuinely haven't got a clue how to get out of it, and the only thing they could do was resign. There were two things they could have done: either resigned, or let the clock run down, or read about the En Passant rule. It wasn't obvious unless you know about the En Passant rule. So they actually resigned at this exact point. And I said they cannot move there because of the rook, can't move there because of the rook, can't move there because of the rook, they cannot move there because of this pawn, and they cannot take this pawn because of that pawn. So what should they have done? Well, there was only one possible valid move, which they probably didn't notice, and that was to move this pawn here, which will then take this pawn off. This now changes everything, because now they have more pieces than I do, and they can genuinely get checkmate now. Okay? I'm going to carry on the game as they could have done, playing for both sides. I'm going to play better for black just to show that they could have got checkmate from here. Okay? Now, I'm just going to move my rook out. I'm just going to play not particularly well, just to show how they could have done things. I'm now going to move here. White could then threaten a queen, the pawn which could be a potential queen. I'm actually going to go back on that. I'm going to move it down here. Okay? Now, this rook can take the pawn, Now move the king here. Now I'm going to do some rather strange things. It's worked earlier, so it might not work now. Now, takes the pawn. Now the king moves there. I did do something earlier which looked very good. Unfortunately, this doesn't look so good now. Now white can move this. Now I'm going to assume that and I cannot take this because they have to move. And I'm going to do something strange here. I'm going to move this here. I'm going to move this up here. Now I'm just going to do something silly. And at this point I can take the knight. And now if I'm right, checkmate. And this was the checkmate that I saw where earlier when I tried this out myself, where they couldn't, where this pawn was stopping them from moving there or there, and the king didn't originally want to move away from this, simply because they could then be a queen, and moving the bishop there forced checkmate. So there you go. I showed how it would be possible for them to have won the game and got checkmate if they had carried on. But they didn't carry on because they genuinely hadn't got a clue about this En Passant rule, I believe. Because if they had have done, they would have carried on. So there you go, guys. One of the very few rare times when En Passant is the only legal valid move in a chess game. Okay? Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!